Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, we're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally as important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else. Not in the media and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Good afternoon, Dan Proft, and joining me on this edition of Illinois Rising is Illinois Opportunity Project co-founder Pat Hughes. Pat, this past week, you had that much-anticipated meeting between Governor Rauner and the four legislative leaders. Some of our listeners may have seen the five individuals meet, kind of the staged picture. It was almost like it was a picture of wax museum statues of Governor Rauner and the four legislative leaders. I wasn't overwhelmed by the warmth of that image, but the question is, how much real progress is being made? Is there the possibility there's going to be some kind of budget accord in the near term? It seems to me that that's not possible as long as you have Mike Madigan, the House Speaker, and John Cullerton, the Senate President, insisting on tax increases without structural reforms.
Yeah, I don't think that from a budget resolution perspective, this is going to be helpful. And I thought it was a little odd visually to see it. But I think from a political perspective for the governor, it is advantageous because prior to him being elected, Madigan would have never participated in something like this, right? He was behind the curtain. He didn't have to come out into the public. He's done numerous press conferences. He's doing events like this. Part of the reason for that, Dan, as you know, is that there are 30 legislative districts that Rauner won that Madigan or Cullerton still has a legislator in as a Democrat, and Rauner is going to go after those seats. And I think that Madigan recognizes there's some vulnerability here. So the advantage to Rauner, I think, in this is that Madigan and Cullerton are willing to participate in this. And from my perspective, it shows a little weakness. The other thing I think that is incredible is when you pull the man behind the curtain and Madigan steps out, the word extreme comes out all the time. He keeps saying that Rauner's extreme. And I think that word is losing some of its forcefulness because clearly what the governor is proposing is a lot of things, but it isn't extreme.
Well, and also the governor's been willing to give on some of the component parts of his turnaround agenda,
Correct.
And there's been very little give with from Speaker Madigan, from John Cullerton, from the Chicago Democrats, who rule the roost in Springfield still, despite Rauner's election, because of the supermajorities they have. Very little give from them in terms of rethinking a state government that we can't finance, number one, and that doesn't produce what it promises to produce in terms of benefits for Illinois families, and doesn't do so at exorbitant prices. For more on that, let's talk to a state representative in a district that Rauner won, that he also won as a Republican. He is State Representative Randy Freese from the Quincy area. Randy, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here with you, Dan. Thank you.
So what was as a freshman legislator, what was your take on the meeting that occurred between the governor and legislative leaders this week, and what, if any, progress are you seeing in Springfield?
Yeah, very interesting. I'd be interested to hear your take on my take. I looked at the video that was put out, and it seemed to me that the players at the table all came with papers and preparation in front of them, except for one, and that was President Cullerton. And I think later on, watching the news conference afterwards, and Christine Radonio and Jim Durkin both said that Cullerton did most of the talking, and that certainly didn't happen during the recorded part. That came apparently afterwards. So there was a little bit of a dichotomy there that I got from my perception of Senator Cullerton. I just didn't think he came prepared for that, but he was apparently prepared for after the cameras were turned off.
Well, he's a savant. He has it all in his head. And also, Mike Madigan is kind of like the Kaiser Sose, so he's not going to say anything, particularly because I think the relationship between Madigan and Rauner is a bit chilly. To understate the case, but has it been your experience and knowledge down there in Springfield and at the Capitol that Cullerton has really been the lead on trying to find points of commonality, where Madigan has been a bit more intransigent to such discussions.
Yeah, I guess I would say that's probably the predominant of what we're hearing. But then, when Speaker Madigan in that conference, in that meeting, says he tells one side of the story when he says, the governor presented a cuts-only budget. Well, he should have, in the same breath, continued on and said, well, and our House Democrats filed a increased spending-only budget.
Unconstitutional budget.
Exactly. And you can talk out of one side of your mouth, or you can give one side of the story, but that doesn't do anybody any good. Let's talk about the whole thing that faces the state of Illinois and the complications that we have to getting to an agreement.
Hey, Randy, it's Pat. How are you?
Hi, Pat. Great.
Thanks for being on. I'm not surprised that Madigan didn't give the other side of the story. What is your sense about a budget resolution? I mean, my feeling is that the state, although there are services that are falling behind, and that's never a good thing, particularly for people in need, the state is continuing to operate. And my view of it is that, over time, Rauner is going to win the public relations battle by continuing to insist on portions of the turnaround agenda and continuing to say that he's willing to compromise if structural change takes place. What is your view on when a budget would take place, and what's your view on the politics of how this is going?
Well, I think everything you said there is very correct, and I think Governor Rauner has managed it very well. I think, the first thing he did was take off the table the public school funding. That relieved pressure on a lot of the downstate Republicans that have to come to table to negotiate. He also just recently, with the Senate bill that we just passed through the House, released about $3 billion worth of the other state funds that were very influential in also helping us downstate, because right here in my district I have an Illinois veterans home that was it was like a $24.8 million line item in that budget that they needed released. And there's a lot of small businesses that provide services to the veterans home that need those dollars, so that relieves pressure. So again, I think the governor is managing it very, very well. And I look forward to the upcoming icebreakers or the log jam breakers that are upcoming. Apparently, they're meeting again next Tuesday in Chicago. I will be up there, but I'll be out of town, out of Chicago by Monday, so I won't be there to see or hear the fireworks on Tuesday. But I'm very much looking forward to what comes out of that.
But I mean, are we at a point where no budget? This sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but no budget is the right play, because any budget, with the positions that Chicago Democrats in charge of the House and the Senate have taken, is a tax increase, and a tax increase only.
Yeah, exactly. And Governor Rauner came to the table saying, look, we're interested in working with you and looking at revenue increases or tax increases. However, we need some structural reforms. But when the structural reforms were actually talked about, the backs were turned and people started walking out the door saying, well, we can't do this. And again, I think Leader Radonio hit it right on the nail on the head when it's the small special interest groups that fund the Democratic Party that are making the loudest noise, asking for them to stick in there for those.
And those special interests we're talking about, let's just name them. We're talking about the public sector unions.
Sure, well, yeah, that's a big part of it. Exactly.
Hey, Randy. Later on in the show, we're going to have a segment where we talk about Chicago being ranked at dead last in some economic characteristics. And, we constantly see Illinois ranked at the low end of these sort of economic calculations when these lists are given out. And people are just pummeled in your area, across the state with bad news about the condition of our state. What can you tell our listeners that they can be hopeful and positive about with a new governor, with how you guys are working in the General Assembly, so that they have a reason to believe?
Well, I think, again, the governor's managing the situation well. He's also put wonderful key people in high positions in the directorships, secretaries of different agencies and organizations. We hope those agencies and organizations are run a lot more efficiently, and we find that we can serve as many or more people with the same or less tax dollars. So I think as things continue to go on, right now, it seems like we're focused a lot on short term. We're focused on getting this budget, making sure we put away, for the first time in 14 or 15 years, a balanced budget. But that's the short-term thinking, and I think Governor Rauner has a much more long-term vision for the state of Illinois. He's always talked about it's not about thinking about the next election; it's thinking about the next generation. And there's a lot of assets that I believe Governor Rauner brings to the table. And he said he would travel to the United States or the world to try to bring business to Illinois if we could create a better business climate. And I think we've got a person there in Governor Rauner who is able and willing to do this, and we just need to stay behind him and give him that opportunity.
We're talking to State Rep Randy Freese, a Republican from the Quincy area, and Randy, there's a state located just outside Chicago called Illinois. You represent part of it. And I wonder what, we don't hear from, the voices of families in Quincy very much in Chicago, but I wonder what your constituents are saying as they view what's happening in Springfield, how that impacts their life, and what they're saying to you about this standoff between the governor and legislative leaders.
Well, so I hear, and there's different segments, of course. There are some service agencies that provide much-needed help to, and whether it's children who are abused or elderly who would maybe like to take care of themselves in their own home instead of having to go to a nursing home. We're part of that microcosm of the larger thing. I hear that all the time, and that there are certain funding that is required for them to be able to do their job. We understand that, but we look at it as Illinois has put themselves in a weaker position, and we cannot help the most people when we're in that weak position. We need to get back to a stronger position, and we certainly haven't had over the past dozen years the leadership and the proper management to keep us or put us in that stronger situation to help people. So here in my district, 94th district, agriculture is king. We're very rural. The largest town is 40,000 people, and then the next largest town is 10,000 in a district that's 108,000 people. So very, very rural. And a lot of the messages that I hear from people when I go out and attend the different functions is, Governor Rauner is on the right track. Please tell Governor Rauner to keep it up. We cannot continue to go down this same road. We need changes. So that's what I hear. That's what I communicate back to the governor, and it's still strong here in West Central Illinois.
All right. He is State Representative Randy Freese, Republican from Quincy. Representative Freese, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.